Have you ever been called an idiot? What about silly? Maybe even a two-bit hussy? What about a potato head? Okay, never mind that last one. That's a little bit personal. But centuries ago, those weren't insults at all. An idiot just meant an ordinary private person, a layman, an outsider. Silly meant blessed, innocent, harmless. And a hussy just meant a housewife up until about the 17th century. Then it started to mean a woman of improper behavior. There's tons of our everyday insults that actually began as innocent words. Sometimes they were even compliments. But somewhere along the way, those good words became evil. Okay, maybe evil is a slight exaggeration, but what once had a positive meaning picked up a negative one. I found nearly 70 insult words like this, but I boiled them down to just the best ones, and then I split them into groups. The first group, the villains, then the fallen ladies, then the schemers, then the fallen angels. Some of these origins will shock you, and that's what we do here at Wise to the Words. Let's begin, as all good stories do, with the villains. But it's not what you think. Everyone in this group started out as simply ordinary folk. We think of villains as bad guys, evildoers, but that wasn't the original meaning. In the late 1200s, early 1300s, a villain was just a farm worker, a peasant, a man tied to the land. It comes from the Latin villa, a country house, a farm. But over time, rural laborers were looked down upon, and the word darkened. By the 1600s, villain clearly meant a scoundrel, a man of gross wickedness. Talk about a fall from grace, from plowing the fields to plotting world domination. But the next one surprised me even more. Clown. Today, a clown is a fool, or something children either laugh at or quietly fear. But back in the 1500s, a clown was just a country fellow, a rustic, a peasant. In other words, an ordinary person from the countryside. Then the word started picking up ideas of clumsiness and stupidity. By the late 1500s and 1600s, the clown became the comic fool on the stage. So clown went from a countryman to a guy making balloon animals. Craziness. And clown was far from alone. English is full of words that originally meant a commoner, a peasant, a country dweller, and somehow became insults. Most likely because they were looked down on by snooty city people, whereas some Texans I knew used to say, the cityots. Here are a few more. You had the yokels, the bumpkins, the rubes, the boors, the hicks, farmers, country people. Language was not kind to them. Yokel, for example, is probably from the German Jokel, which is a diminutive of Jacob, but just referred to farmers, sometimes the Amish. Boor originally came from herdsman or farmer, because in Latin, bovis means ox. By the 1500s, it meant someone rude and uncultured. A rube likely came from the common name Reuben, apparently the chosen name for a gullible country fellow. Rough break for the Reubens. No relation apparently to the Reuben sandwich. A hick comes from Richard or Rick, another ordinary name that somehow got stuck wearing overalls forever. But it wasn't just country people. Even outsiders, foreigners, and strangers got the same treatment. They started as innocent descriptive words, and then over time became derogatory terms. Today, a pagan means a non-Christian, but the Latin paganus originally meant a villager, a rural civilian, someone from the countryside.
You know the old meaning of pagan as well as I do.
Belonging to the village.
A heathen originally meant someone who lived on the heath, the uncultivated open land, the wasteland.
You heathen swine!
And a barbarian began as simply a foreigner whose language sounded strange to Greek ears.
How dare you call anyone barbarian?
So history was hard on peasants, servants, farmers, and outsiders. But if you think men got the worst of it, let me introduce you to the fallen ladies.
She is ugly.
You got the hussies, the wenches, the spinsters, the mistresses, the floozies, and the sluts. A hussy, or huzzy, was once just a housewife. That's it. It comes from housewife, worn down in pronunciation over time, like hubby. But this next one, is more spicy, perhaps the most spiciest of all the words in this video. Slut. A slut was once not a sexual insult at all. Originally, it referred to a slovenly, dirty, untidy woman, someone careless in dress. So in older usage, it could even mean a kitchen maid or drudge. In other words, the accusation was first about messiness, not morality, but over time, the meaning shifted. What began as an insult about disorder and poor housekeeping became an accusation of sexual immorality. And today, it's one of the harshest words in the language. Now, a softer alternative to slut could be a floozy, which originally just meant fancy or frilly, before it shifted to mean a woman of disreputable character in the early 1900s.
You're a floozy.
A wench was once simply a young woman or girl. Later, it picked up rougher and vulgar associations. Another ordinary word dragged through the mud was spinster. A spinster was once an honorable working woman, a spinner of thread. It was an occupation. Later, it became shorthand for an unmarried woman, usually with pity or mockery attached.
A spinster is an old woman who never found love.
A mistress was once simply the female form of master. If a man was the master of the house, the woman was the mistress of the house, the lady in authority, the woman in charge, the female head of the household. It could also mean a woman of rank, responsibility, or skill. A schoolmistress, for example, was simply a female teacher. In other words, the word originally carried dignity and authority and respect, but over time, the meaning narrowed and shifted. Today, mistress is far more likely to mean a woman involved in an illicit affair with a married man. Status and gender weren't the only things English turned against. Apparently, being clever wasn't safe either. Words that were once compliments became insults. Welcome to the schemers. To be cunning once meant to be knowledgeable, skillful, learned. A cunning craftsman was simply a highly capable one. Today, cunning usually means clever in a sneaky or manipulative way. Same with crafty. Crafty meant skillful. Now it means sly, tricky, and deceptive. Somewhere along the way, skill became suspicious.
He's a crafty one.
Sly once meant clever, wise, prudent. Today, it almost always suggests deception and secret motives. Wily meant clever and resourceful. Today, it means someone is so clever that you probably shouldn't trust them. Then came subtle, which meant fine and delicate. Then deceptive. You have pretentious, meant aspiring, but now it means self-importance. You have affected, which meant influenced. That's all it meant. Then it turned always negative to mean artificial and fake. Artificial itself was simply a work of art. Literally means a work of art. It's crazy how society admires intelligence, but is also at the same time deeply skeptical about it. People are smart Alex, too smart for their own good. Some words were more spiritual, less tangible. They were bright and beautiful, even holy, but they fell too. This is the group I call the fallen angels. We already met the word silly, which originally meant blessed and innocent and happy. And most of the words in this list all of us have used. An awful thing was once not terrible at all. Originally, awful meant full of awe, something inspiring wonder, reverence, even fear in the grandest sense. A cathedral could be awful. A king's majesty could be awful. Then you have the awful power and majesty of God. But over time, the sense slid downward. What once meant awe-inspiring came to mean unpleasant, dreadful, or very, very bad. Something egregious was not bad at all. Originally, egregious came from Latin meaning standing out from the flock, from ex meaning out of, and grege meaning the herd or flock. So in other words, it meant remarkably good, egregious. And then you have something vulgar. It was once not crude at all. Originally, vulgar came from the Latin vulgus, meaning common people, the ordinary crowd, the public at large. A vulgar tongue was simply the everyday language actually spoke. That's where we get the idea of the vernacular, the common speech of ordinary folk. So today, vulgar often means that crude speech, dirty jokes, or language not fit for polite company. Similarly, something lewd was once not obscene at all. This one shocked me. Originally, lewd simply meant lay, someone who was not a cleric, a layman, not part of the religious class, an ordinary person. And in medieval times, the learned world was often associated with the clergy, so a lewd person could also mean unlearned or common. But over time, the word kept slipping downward. What once meant layman came to mean ignorant, then base, then morally improper. That's a long fall for an ordinary person minding his own business. It's crazy how words change. Originally, naughty meant having nothing, from not, nothing. A naughty person was simply a poor person or a needy person. But over time, the meaning shifted. What once meant penniless came to mean wicked, badly behaved, or mischievous. Simple just meant plain and uncomplicated, but now it means stupid. Weird just meant fate, destiny, chance. Now it means strange or odd-looking. Then you have the word garish. It originally meant splendid. Now if you call someone garish, you're calling them gaudy. Cheap was just a bargain, but now it means low quality. Coarse and crude was just rough and raw and unfinished. But both are insults to mean vulgar and rude today. Homely is just homelike, something that should be a compliment. But now it means unattractive. Naive just meant innocent. Now it means gullible. Smug originally meant trim and neat, and then it became a self-satisfied person. And that's why I love etymology. Every word has a hidden history. If you enjoy uncovering the secret lives of words, please consider subscribing. Now you're wise to the words. You silly people.